Welcome to the 16th week after Pentecost. It is Thursday, September the 12th, 2024. This is the Manna at the Tap podcast, where we as a community actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. The daily lectionary reading we explore together is the manna designed to nurture our spiritual growth and provide the sustenance our souls need. I'm Gloria, your fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we offer and receive insights and interpretations from these readings, enriching our spiritual lives. Today's lectionary reading takes us back to Hebrews chapter 11, often called the honor roll of the faithful. Today, we'll be examining verses 17 to 22, which covers the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Abraham was sure he was being called to offer Isaac as a sacrifice to God when Isaac was about 33 years old. In ancient times, Abraham's pagan neighbors would sacrifice a son as a demonstration of their love for their deity. This practice reminded Abraham of what took place when he lived in the Ur of the Chaldeans, now a modern day Turkish territory. God had promised Abraham and Sarah a child when they first left their place of birth and traveled to a new homeland, but it would be many years before they could have the one child, and they named him Isaac. Now, from the perspective of the author of Hebrews, it was a test of Abraham's faith in God's promise that beginning with Isaac, he would have multitudes of generations of children. Abraham did not hesitate to make the journey of sacrificing his one and only son. He rose early and started the journey to Mount Moriah. He reasoned that God could even raise the dead. The author knows you, the reader of Hebrews, remembered the moment when God called to Abraham as his hand was lifted to sacrifice Isaac. A ram was seen in the bushes and it was sacrificed instead. Faith for Abraham meant that he obeyed God to take the journey to the mount. It also meant that when he was about to sacrifice his only son, and when he was told to stop, he stopped immediately. The writer of Hebrews tells us that Isaac had faith and blessed his twin sons, Jacob and Esau, regarding matters in their future. The blessing, though, he passed on was God's covenant promises of faith from his father Abraham, which he emulated. Twin boys Jacob and Esau had many conflicts, forcing Jacob to leave the family compound and go to his mother's home. But there he endured much suffering at the hand of his mother's brother for many years. And when Rachel, the woman he loved, finally had a son, they named him Joseph. And that is when Jacob decided to return to the family compound with his newly acquired family. Along the way, Rachel died in childbirth, leaving Jacob with a newborn son whom he named Benjamin. Jacob had 12 sons, but Joseph was his favorite, and his brothers hated him because of that. So when the opportunity arose, they sold him to traders who took him to Egypt. Jacob was heartbroken and he assumed that Joseph was dead. In Egypt, Joseph suffered, ending up in prison, falsely accused of something he had not done. In prison, though, God reminded Joseph that he was not alone because God was with him. Joseph was an interpreter of dreams, and when Pharaoh could find no one to interpret his dream, Joseph was called upon. He was elevated from the prison to the palace to execute the divine plan of saving the world from famine. When Jacob's sons came to Egypt to buy grain for their families, Joseph saw and recognized them, but they did not recognize him. After some time, Joseph invited his father and family to Egypt to escape the famine. Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years, and when it was time to die, he blessed Joseph's two sons, having faith that God would work in their future. Jacob worshiped God while leaning on his staff on his deathbed and was faithful until the end. Finally, when Joseph was about to die, he mentioned God's promise to Abraham to his brothers. And after living in Egypt for a long time, he believed God would fulfill his promise to the family. So he requested that his body be taken with them when they returned to the homeland that God had promised. He had his body embalmed in Egypt, and when they left under the leadership of Moses, they took his body along. All the patriarchs died having faith, knowing they were here on pilgrimage, and their eternal home was with God.